Hey, welcome to Game Dev Weekly. If you're new here, I'm working on Hydroneer, a mining game where you dig for gold and other resources to build massive mining machines. I want to start off this week by showing you one of the images I got sent by a Patreon, Envy. He's been working really hard on this mine shaft and it is incredible. I've seen some other photos of other than this one, and he's got an entire mine system. He's using the tin roofs as walking platforms throughout his mine shaft. He's got piping running all the way through it, little rooms for crafting inside as well, and this insane amount of resources that he's collected. Using suggestions from Patreons like Envy is really useful because they can come up with problems that I might not even see in the game's design. So you can see here, obviously there needs to be some sort of way to transport all of these resources back to the surface. That's going to be something I work on in the next few weeks in some future updates. I'm going to start off this week by bringing back one of the old systems, and that was the old physics system. Some earlier patrons may remember this. It was a change that kind of changed a lot about how the game actually feels. And there were a lot of complications with this. So essentially what it is right now if you pick up one of these, a bucket or any item, and you drop it, the physics gets disabled after a few seconds. So you can see right here that I can just walk over this bucket instead of kicking it. If the physics were enabled, then I'd be kicking it instead of walking over it. And this is because there's some issues with the voxel terrain system. So let's say I leave this bucket here and I walk away. What would happen is when I'm far enough away, this terrain would lose its collisions. So that means the bucket would fall straight down and the player wouldn't be able to see it again. So to resolve this issue, I talked to the developer behind this plugin that I use that controls all of the terrain in the game, and explained to him the problem, and then he fixed it for me. So what happened now is essentially if you drop this, it would stay there. You can walk away pretty far and come back, and the bucket would still be there. One of the main reasons I want to bring this back as well is exactly because of this. If I try and pick up this pan, then it would leave the brush floating. Whereas if we bring back the old physics system, then the brush will still have its physics and probably fall down as well. So to bring back the old physics system, it's not a massive deal, but it does include a lot of work with the saving and loading system, since now whenever I load in an object, I have to load it in and then disable its physics, and yeah, it takes a while. So I'm going to just start looking into that, and then I'm going to have to do some testing just to make sure that everything is actually working as intended. Okay, so after some work, the physics system is now back in. So if you drop an item, instead of the physics locking off after a few seconds, they stay permanent. I think this is a really cool feature, and I also think it's just a big part of making the game feel good. You know, if you've just got these things which are just static and not moving around, it makes them just feel a bit too static, I guess. So what will happen now is, you know, once you load in, all the items will kind of be there where you left them. While I was making this, I also was thinking about the next update number 5. I think maybe I'm going to keep this one a bit smaller than the other ones have been, just because changing this physics, it might just be a simple little thing, but it also can affect the game quite a lot. Maybe might even throw up a few more bugs. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start thinking about how many new features I want to have in this update, and then keep it relatively small, and then just send it out as soon as. The last update was about 2 weeks ago, I think, from the time of this video coming out. So what I want to do is maybe have it out in a few days, maybe even a week, but more on that later on. So I'm going to be making some changes to the resource system. This has been requested by one of the Patreons, Foulball. Basically what's happening is when you take a bucket of dirt and you put it into a pan, and then you spawn the resources. The resources are kind of annoying to pick up one by one, especially if they're small from this you know, low tier dirt that I've just dug this out of now. So what I want to do is add in some sort of system where you can just pick up the pan and then kind of pour it into the bucket. So that's something that I am going to be working on next. As well as that, I've also been working on some other features. So what I've done is I've made it so resources will now always spawn, because before what was happening was there was a chance for the resources to not spawn, and it was kind of getting a bit annoying, so I wanted to just get rid of that completely. And because of this as well, I've made it so the resources are a little bit cheaper just because they're always spawning now and there's no chance for them not to spawn. The other change that I've made as well is that when you're brushing the dirt out of the pan, it always takes 2 times. It will never, because sometimes it took 1 time, sometimes it takes 3 times. I had it on a random loop, but now it'll just only be 2 times. Okay, so I've tried a few different variations of how I want to do this. There isn't really one that I'm completely sold on yet. This is the best one I've got so far. So I'm probably going to work on it moving on to next week as well. So what happens is if we get our pan of dirt and water, and when we brush through it, what happens is the ores that stay in there will actually lock onto the pan, so then this pan can now be picked up and carried with these ores still in there as if they were in the bucket. But I've made it so you can't just add in a new ore to this pan. It won't actually lock on as it would with the bucket. So then you can't actually use the pan as a bucket. It only stores the items as soon as they're made, instead of being able to retrofit and put them back in. That's going to do it for this week. If you're interested in checking out Hydroneer, the links are all in the description if you want to add it to your Steam wishlist, or if you want to play it now on Patreon. You can also follow me on Twitter or join the Discord server. They're great places to hang out and talk to other people. Maybe if you want to ask some questions to people playing the game right now. Big thanks to all my Patreons as per usual, and I will see you all next week.